Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I am trying out the Karin Brushmarker Pro system. When I'm trying out a new marker or pencil or any type of medium like that, I never buy the whole collection at first. I always start with a mid-size amount. So usually the smallest amount of markers in a set is a little too small for me as far as gauging the colors and whether or not I'm going to really enjoy them. But I don't want to get the full collection until I know that I will actually use them. So today I've tried out a mid-size amount, which is 26 colors and one blender pen. So first, let's swatch out these markers using the Waffle Flowers Color Swatches for Watercolors stamp set. So I wanted to share what the markers look like in their packaging. They come in this very sturdy cardboard box that has a magnetic snap lid, and they are stored with the tip side facing up, which is how they recommend you store them. So I'm going to keep them in this box. I also want to share that there's a brush tip, but it's a pretty sturdy brush tip. It doesn't bend. The benefit of that is that the very point of that brush tip is very fine and can be used to create some really thin details. So again, like I mentioned, you store them tip up. I'm just going to keep them in this box. I think that's probably the easiest way to store them. I love the colors that this set comes with. Some really pretty blues, yellows, a pretty pink, and then some neutrals as well. So there's also a blender pen. I didn't make use of it that much in this video. I did try it a little bit. I'm just as happy using water with these pens, honestly. So I don't know how much I'd actually use that blender pen. This is the Color Swatches for Watercolors stamp set by Waffle Flower, and I am using Gina K Designs Amalgam ink, which can be used with watercolor. So the Amalgam can be used with watercolor or Copics. This is my Debbie tool. It has felt on the bottom, wood in the middle, and a nice comfortable handle at top. That makes it really easy to add pressure to the door of the MISTI, especially when you're stamping a really large image like this with lots of details. I want to make sure all of these rectangles are stamped clearly and cleanly so that I can fill them in. I am starting with the first pink marker that was in the box on the upper right hand side of the box. And I'll show you the box in a little bit so you can see how I'm working through it as I go through my swatches. So I drew a line across the box there, and then I'm taking a brush and a little bit of water and blending it out. A couple of things with this first swatch. I waited a little bit long before I actually started blending it out because I hadn't even spritzed my water yet. And the other thing was I was using a very tiny brush and I needed more of a medium-sized brush. So I am not a watercolor expert. I am not that great at swatching. You would think that it doesn't require talent. It kind of does, honestly. You have to know what you're doing to get a really good swatch coming out. But I got better as I got along, and I noticed that some of the colors were actually easier to swatch than other ones. So you'll find your groove once you get going. I think having the darkest line at the top gives you an idea of what the marker looks like when you draw with it or color with it. And actually, a lot of people use these markers to do hand lettering. So that would give you an idea of the darkest the color can be. And then as you add water to it and brush down towards the bottom of the rectangle, that'll give you an idea of how light you can get the color depending on how much water you add to it. So swatching is a really great way to get to know your supplies. Waffle Flower actually has an entire line of swatch stamps and dies, things that can help you really understand the colors that you have of the mediums that you own, and then also organize your swatches into little booklets, things like that to keep you really organized and also understand your markers, your pens, your pencils even, things like that. So I'm just continuing through, and now you can see the box. I'm just going along the direction of the box. I'm going to keep them in this order. This way I can just keep this swatch along with the box, and I'll be able to tell which color is which marker. So that's that. Now you can see that I didn't swatch them all because I didn't have enough space, but I felt like really it was the colors that I wanted to see. Now that I know what colors I have to work with, I'm going to create a watercolor background and color in a stamped image with these Karin Brushmarker Pros. To create my background, I'm first going to use a ReverseConfetti die called Along the Dotted Lines cover panel, and the image that I'm going to stamp and die cut and watercolor in with the Karin Brush Pro markers is their Orange Blossom stamp set. So let's get started with a few watercolor techniques to create this card. First off, I did want to share that I'm working on Artesia Expert watercolor paper. This little A2 is actually the Nina Solar White, so the Artesia is not 100% white, and I just wanted to share that. Again, I'm using Gina Designs Amalgam ink in Obsidian, which is good for watercoloring and Copic markers. And this is the main image from the Orange Blossom stamp set from ReverseConfetti. You can see that the first time I didn't get ink everywhere, or I didn't press right in the same areas. That's why I use the MISTI. So for those of you who are new to card making and are asking what this tool is that I'm using, I'm combining the MISTI, which is the stamp positioner that I'm using to stamp the same image twice to keep it all in the same place. And then the Debbie tool is the image that I use to apply the pressure on the outside. Okay, I have cut a piece of the watercolor paper and I'm going to use it to cut out the Along the Lines cover panel die. Now I'm going to put a piece of Waffle Flowers premium palette paper, which is nice and smooth. It's not waxy, it doesn't bead up. And I'm going to put that in my Waffle Flower water media mat to protect the mat from getting stained, because I have a feeling that these markers would stain it. The colors are so bright and vibrant. I am drawing a water droplet here, and I just took the darker of the two blues and outlined a little circle, and now I am adding some shading to one corner of that circle with the lighter color. You can see those colors blend together, but the real magic happens when you add some water. So I took a very fine paintbrush, blended the colors out, filled it in, and actually expanded the droplet as well. The reason that I'm actually drawing the droplets is because I want some of them to be large. You can also, on that palette paper, you can scribble the marker down just like I did there, spritz it with a little water from my distress sprayer, and then mix it together and pick it up with a paintbrush and tap the top, and then you'll get those small droplets, which I love as well. I want the whole thing to be covered to look like the background was kind of sprayed with water. This way it looks like the orange blossoms are, growing and they're being spritzed with water, and it's just a very fresh, kind of almost summery look, just everything we're looking forward to right now. So I'm going to continue doing that, drawing some water droplets and then adding in some smaller ones as well with the flick of the brush. And you can see I did draw some tiny ones that look pretty small, but they're definitely larger than the flicked bits of paint. So I just wanted a combination of the two, and I love the organic look of the water droplets that I drew once you add some actual water to them. So you can see you get 3 grays in this pack: a cool, a neutral, and a warm. They do have the numbers and the colors on the cap there. So I decided to use the warm gray to add some details to the flowers of the orange blossoms, because I figured the orange blossoms, the oranges are going to be orange, and that's a warm color. You can see the tip of the gray. I was able to get very fine lines. Because the flower is white, I just wanted to add a little bit of detail to it with that gray. And that's what I did. And then I just blended that out a little bit to soften the lines with a small paintbrush and some water. Not too much water, but just a little bit to blend it out a touch. Now we're going to start working on the leaves. So I have 3 different colors of greens. I'm taking the lightest color of green and I'm outlining the veins of the leaf, and then I'm taking the darkest color and adding a little bit to the bottom of the leaf, right along that same line of the vein. And then I'm taking a small paintbrush with a little bit of water and just blending that out. And you can see how you get a really nice gradient of color from the base of the leaf to the tip of the leaf just by using those 2 colors of green and a little bit of water. So I started to, again, just like the swatching, the more you get through an image and start doing the same thing over and over again, you get different ways of doing it that really stand out in different ways as well. So I actually started to blend the base of the leaf and then clean the brush and blend out the tip. And that got an even more contrasted gradient of color. This way I was using a clean brush to do the lightest part of the leaf rather than having all of that dark color go from the bottom all the way to the tip of the leaf. So this was really, really easy. I am, again, not a watercolor artist, but I had fun coloring in those leaves. For the centers of the flower, I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow and then just blend them out with the tiny paintbrush and a little bit of water. And I'm not really concerned about doing anything more there because they're so tiny. Okay, for the oranges, again, I change my technique as I go through and I see what I like as I'm doing it. First, I started with a light orange and just kind of a line on the side that I thought was supposed to be the darkest, which has the little dots, right? So, and then I added the little dots in with a darker color of orange, and then I'm blending them out with the little paintbrush and some water. Only thing I didn't like about this was I felt like you couldn't really see any contrast, that the whole thing just ended up kind of being orange, which is fine. If you like it, then go for it. But I decided to change my technique. So this time I'm starting with the dark dots with the dark orange, and I'm going to do a couple at a time. I'm realizing that this ink, especially on watercolor paper, stays wet enough that you can blend them out if you do images that are close to each other like this. So this time I added some of that lighter orange just over top of the dots, and then I'm just starting at the edge of that line and moving that color out. So you can see I'm not actually going over the whole orange. I just start at the line that's the edge of the color towards the white and then pull it out. So I did notice here, I had a little bit of the paper pill up already and I wasn't using very much water. So I'm not sure that I love this paper yet. I'll probably give it another chance, but it was affordable, that's for sure. So between the not completely white and this pilling so fast, I'm not 100% sure that I would recommend it for all kinds of watercoloring. But if you just want something to play with that's affordable, it is definitely that. Okay, so now I'm really going to town with several oranges going all at once. And you can see that I'm not having any trouble blending them out. So like I said, as long as your images are close together so that you're not having a lot of dry time, you're fine. You can see there that I was able to touch the tip of the marker down to the orange after I had colored it. So it was still a little bit wet, but it worked really fine because once you touch the tip to that slightly wet orange, it spread the color on its own. You didn't even have to do any work. So I'm going to stamp the sentiment on the same paper so that everything matches up. And then I'm going to cut that little thank you sentiment down to a sentiment strip. So I am adhering the largest image of the orange blossoms with some foam squares behind it to pop it up off of that watercolor background that I created with the water droplets. And then I'm going to use some tape runner for the smaller images. I have some leaves and another bunch of oranges and blossoms just to tuck behind to fill in that image a whole bunch. And then I'm going to use some foam squares to pop up the sentiment as well. These markers are very easy to use even for someone who's not a watercolor artist like myself, and I love the vibrancy and the colors that are included in this pack of markers. So what did you think about the Karin Brush markers? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'm going to be using them and seeing how much I use them and seeing whether or not I want to upgrade to the full collection. I'll be sure to let you know in a future video. If you want to see lots more card making techniques and reviews of card making supplies, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified every time I have a new video available. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. I don't even know where my writing is right now. We might have to do that all over again. So close. So what did you think about I don't know, about what? What did you think? And hit that bell so I can be notified. Well, that doesn't help you at all.